The hospital doors didn't shatter. They opened, too clean, too controlled, like whoever came in had practiced it. The first thing people heard wasn't shouting. It was the sound of boots on polished tile, steady and unhurried, moving toward the wards. At the nurse's station, a new nurse stood with a fresh badge and quiet hands, being spoken over like she was still learning where supplies were kept. When the first armed man stepped into view, staff froze. Phones slipped from fingers. Someone whispered, "Do what they say." The nurse didn't argue. She just watched the angles, the exits, the distance between breaths. And when the men started issuing orders, the room realized something that landed like cold weight. They had misread her completely. The day shift at Hawthorne Medical Center did not begin with drama. It began the way it always did. Too many tasks, too few hands, and a silence that only existed because everyone was saving their breath for what would break later. The lobby televisions played low. The floor wax shined under fluorescent panels. The air smelled like disinfectant and warm plastic from coffee lids. Nurses moved in tight paths around one another, carrying clipboards and medication cups, scanning faces, scanning monitors, scanning doors. At the main nurses' station on 4 South, the patient board was already crowded. Names, room numbers, isolation markers, fall risk warnings. A charge nurse called out assignments in a voice that tried to sound neutral and failed. Phones rang and stopped. A printer chewed through labels and spat them out like a machine that didn't care who they belonged to. Emily Hart stood at the edge of the station with her hands folded loosely in front of her, like she was trying not to take up space. Her badge was so new it still looked stiff white plastic with sharp corners and a temporary strip below it that said new nurse/transfer. Her scrubs were clean and plain. Her hair was pinned tight. She had the kind of posture people read as quiet until they stood close enough to notice it wasn't timid. It was controlled. The charge nurse, Denise, glanced at Emily's badge and decided what Emily was good for. "Your float support today," she said, final. "Vitals, call lights, stocking, assisting. Stay close. Don't wander. If a doctor asks you something you don't know, you find me or you find Maya." Emily nodded once, understood. A resident physician argued with a unit clerk nearby, voice climbing while the clerk stayed flat. Emily watched the resident's hands, his distance, the way he leaned in. When his aggression edged too close, Emily stepped into the line between him and the clerk as if she was passing through to check a chart. The resident's momentum paused. He lowered his voice without realizing he'd been corrected. Denise didn't notice the mechanics. She noticed only Emily standing in the wrong place. "Hart, room 417 needs a blood sugar," Emily went. The patient demanded to know if Emily was the real nurse. Emily didn't defend herself. "I'm your nurse right now," she said, and took the reading with steady hands. Back at the station, the shift tightened. A family member demanded information Denise couldn't give. Transport waited on a patient who refused to move. Respiratory rolled past with a portable oxygen tank, face tense. Near midday, Dr. Klein arrived like he owned the hallway, coat open, mask hanging loose like a symbol. He pointed at the board, demanded a discharge, complained the floor moved like molasses. Denise tried to explain. He cut her off with a small smile and told her to move faster. His eyes shifted to Emily's new badge. "New," he said, tasting the word like weak. He told Emily not to let them put her in charge of anything complicated, that the floor would eat her. Emily nodded once and said, "I hear you." He walked away satisfied, mistaking her calm for compliance. Denise told Emily he was like that with everyone. Emily answered softly, "He's like that with people he thinks won't push back." The hours pressed. Emily didn't stand out by heroics. She stood out by being hard to shake. When a nurse panicked at a dropping O2 sat, Emily found the kinked tubing, fixed it, and said, "Watch the trend. Don't let one number take you hostage." When a man in a suit tried to push into a restricted area, Emily shifted one foot and angled her body so the doorway wasn't an open line. He stopped because pushing her would be visible. Denise watched him leave and asked where Emily worked before. Emily said, "Different system." In the afternoon, security called about a service entrance showing forced open for a second, then closed, cameras glitching when it happened. Denise waved it off as maintenance. Emily didn't. She washed her hands again, watched corridor reflections, and noticed a man near vending machines who didn't look at the snacks. His eyes followed her in a reflection, then dropped away too fast. Denise called again for a linen change. Emily went, doing the job with careful dignity. In the mirror above the sink, she looked like what the badge said, new, temporary, replaceable. But her eyes didn't match. They tracked too much. They held no hunger for approval, just readiness. Back at the station, Denise laughed reflexively at something a resident said. The floor kept pretending it was just another day. Then from somewhere below, an entrance door opened and closed, not slammed, not broken, controlled. The building felt like it shifted its weight. Emily looked up and her posture changed by an inch, the smallest preparation, like bracing for weather. It was the first quiet moment, where the hospital began moving toward the day it would learn what her badge could not explain. By late afternoon, Hawthorne Medical Center had the tired hum of a place running too long without rest. The lights stayed the same, but the sound grew thinner, less talking, more listening between sounds. Emily kept doing what Denise wanted, call lights, vitals, stocking carts, while building a mental map of 4 South as if she might need it fast. She checked stairwell doors without looking like she was checking them, registered taped push bars, creaky hinges, doors that didn't latch clean. She noticed which cameras blinked and which didn't. She watched elevator doors for abnormal timing. Maya caught her looking at a ceiling camera dome and asked if she was okay. Emily said yes. Maya said most new nurses watched IV pumps, not the ceiling. Emily answered, IV pumps don't choose when to fail, people do. The first concrete warning came disguised as normal chaos, a roll of visitor stickers missing. No one cared. Emily looked at the empty spot, then at the hallway where visitors came and went. She saw a man without a sticker standing too close to the wall, hands in jacket pockets, composed in a way that didn't belong. She passed without staring, caught a faint smell of cold metal and chemical oil, saw his eyes track her in a reflection, then drop away fast. She found security's extension but didn't call yet. Instead, she asked Denise where the nearest hard lock point was for training. Denise asked why. Emily said she wanted to know. Denise warned her not to borrow trouble. Emily kept working, shifting beds a few inches away from door sightlines under the excuse of comfort, checking interior locks while helping patients, staging small decisions as routine. She calmed a volatile family member by saying, "She will mirror your tone," and watched the room's aggression deflate. A service elevator opened and stayed open too long, cycling like it was being called from below. A maintenance worker swore the panel was acting up. Emily noticed scuff marks inside, a dirt line as if something heavy had been dragged in. Security arrived on the unit, spoke low with Denise about stairwells not responding, radio channel dead spots, 2 men asking for a specific room. Denise dismissed it as people getting lost. She tucked a paper away like she didn't want to hold it. She told staff to enforce visitor stickers, to send anyone without one downstairs. A partial lockdown began quietly, clicks, buzzers, doors that now needed badges. Staff complained. Visitors rattled doors. Transport got stuck arguing over access. Emily didn't complain. She quietly repositioned the floor, moved a linen cart for space into a place that broke a clean run down the hallway. Brought a confused patient closer to the station so we can watch him, but away from public-facing windows. Guided visitors into a lounge with one entrance and a lockable door because it's quieter. Maya finally said Emily thought it was more than they were saying. Emily didn't answer with fear. She asked, "Where would you stand if someone wanted to control this floor?" and pointed out elevators, stairwells, the vending corner that saw both corridors. Maya's throat tightened. She asked who trained Emily. Emily said, "People who hated mistakes." Then the phones rang in a pattern that felt wrong, multiple lines lighting up, cutting off. An overhead announcement began and died mid-syllable. The unit doors buzzed and unlocked, not from inside, from somewhere else. Denise stared at the indicator, confused. The elevators chimed. The doors parted. A figure stepped out with steadiness that didn't belong, then another. Emily didn't warn loudly. She positioned herself 1 step forward from the station, like answering a call light, shoulders squaring in a way that made Maya's breath catch. Denise whispered, "What is this?" Emily answered, calm, almost gentle, "It's the part where doors stop helping." The men started walking toward the wards. Hawthorne's partial lockdown and quiet denial finally tipped from warning into crisis. The first man off the elevator didn't look like the movies. No mask, no wild eyes, no shaking hands. Plain jacket, dark pants, calm like he'd already decided how the next 10 minutes would go. The second man followed half a step behind, positioned to watch different angles without appearing to. Denise forced professional brightness, asking if she could help them find someone. The first man looked past her. Emily stood one step forward from the station, reading distances, intersections, fire doors, cameras, civilians in open space. The first man lifted a roll of visitor stickers like proof of belonging, then let it fall. The roll hit the floor and spun. A quiet message, "I can wear your permissions like a costume." Denise loaded irritation, then the second man drew a handgun with a clean, practiced motion and fired one shot into the ceiling camera dome. Plastic shattered, the camera went dead. The sound punched the air wrong for a hospital. Someone screamed and cut it off. A visitor dropped to the floor. A nurse froze mid-step. Maya went pale. Denise backed up, hands lifting. Emily kept her hands down, already empty, already non-threatening, already choosing the posture that kept weapons from rising. The first man spoke calmly. No sudden moves, no alarms, no hero stuff. He asked if Denise was charged. He told her to keep people calm because if anyone ran, he'd start guessing. Denise tried to protest that there were patients. He corrected her. Hospitals were good at following instructions. His eyes swept badges, seeking authority, doctors, administrators, then paused on Emily's new nurse strip and moved on. The assumption made her low value harmless, a node that would comply. It protected her for the moment. The second man moved to block a corridor. The first demanded a private room with a phone, then asked where room 419 was. Emily recognized the number from the board, a restricted patient, a quiet internal flag. They weren't here for cash. They were here for a person. Denise asked why. He told her not to ask questions. Denise pointed down the hall. Emily spoke softly, in nurse language, warning that rooms near 419 had oxygen tanks, and a weapon discharge could create a bigger problem. Tactical truth disguised as medical caution. The armed man dismissed her and ordered no calls. A visitor began to cry. The second man's attention snapped toward the sound. Emily crouched beside the visitor and gave her a task. Breathe through your nose, look at my badge, read the letters in your head. The crying softened. The armed man's attention shifted away. Emily returned to her spot. Down the hall, the men moved toward 419 with ownership. A respiratory therapist rolled in with equipment, froze at the sight of the gun. The armed man told him to stop and set it down. The therapist looked toward the station. Emily met his eyes and gave the smallest nod downward. He obeyed slowly. The corridor quieted. An older patient opened a door. A gun swung toward it as warning. The door shut. The first man told Denise if she triggered an alarm, she died first because it was efficient. Denise's fingers trembled toward the desk drawer where the silent panic button lived. Emily leaned in and said, "Don't, not yet. If you press it while they're still organized, you force them to act." Denise hated the truth but pulled her hand back. The partner at room 419 tested the handle, locked. He called calmly for the door to open. No response. The leader told Denise to unlock it. Denise said she didn't have access. The gun angled into her sternum. Emily needed time. She used the only currency she had, procedure. She said room 419 was on isolation protocol and opening it without PPE risked contaminating his people. The leader narrowed his eyes. Emily offered gowns and masks, 2 minutes, no tricks. He saw her badge, judged her harmless, and sent her. Emily went to the supply room, closed the door, and stood between shelves, breathing even. She pulled gowns and masks, then paused at the laminated code protocol sheet, code silver active threat, and touched her phone. Checking internal alerts that were still empty because leadership was trying to keep this quiet. She looked at her reflection, a new nurse dismissed by everyone. She exhaled once, picked up the gowns, and stepped back out. In the corridor, the gun was still on Denise, the partner still at 419. The situation hadn't improved, but Emily had bought time, and time was the only thing that could turn a storm into containment. Emily returned holding 2 gowns and 2 masks like a routine request. She moved with the same measured pace because speed would invite violence. She placed the gowns on the counter edge and stepped back, refusing to cross into leverage range. The men dressed impatiently. Denise stood frozen. Maya hovered behind her. The unit had become a still photograph, nurses pinned behind desks, visitors crouched, patients pulled back into rooms. The leader ordered Denise to badge them into 419. Emily said quietly, "Denise, your hands are shaking. If you miss the reader, they get impatient. Breathe once." "Then do it." Denise took one breath, then another, and steadied. The leader liked calm because it was easier to dominate. He walked Denise down the corridor at gunpoint. Maya tried to follow. He ordered her to stop. At the end of the hall, a third man appeared by the vending machine corner, standing with even weight and measured head turns, controlling escape routes. Emily saw it and concluded what it meant: coordinated, planned, escalating. Denise badged the reader, green light, lock clicked. Room 419 opened. The partner pushed into the room and raised his weapon slightly. A pale man lay half upright in bed, equipment humming. The armed man ordered him to stand. The patient didn't move fast enough. The armed man treated IV lines like furniture. Emily stepped forward, controlled, and said, "He can't stand without disconnecting lines. If you pull him up like that, you'll drop his pressure and he'll collapse." The leader asked why she cared. Emily kept it operational. If he collapsed, there'd be a crowd, noise, response, and they had come here quiet. The leader told her to disconnect him fast. Emily demanded access for one nurse only, no one else. "If I'm lying," she said, "you'll know in 10 seconds. Permission came. Emily entered the room and spoke to the patient quietly. "Don't fight, don't plead, breathe, and follow my hands." She didn't disconnect everything, only what was necessary to move him without immediate collapse. She felt an old ache flare in her shoulder as she reached, a cost she didn't show. The patient whispered they would kill him. Emily didn't promise. She told him the truth. They wanted him alive, that's why they were here. When she finished, she stepped back, palms open. "He can move." The armed man grabbed the patient hard. Emily moved a walker into the hall so the patient could lean without falling, slowing pace under the cover of care. A young nurse peeked out of a room. The third man lifted his gun as warning. Emily caught the nurse's eyes and gave a single head shake, "Go back in." The nurse vanished. The patient shuffled into the hallway, weak, looking toward the station as if it could save him. It didn't. Denise cried now. The leader decided service stairs. Emily countered calmly. Service stairs were locked under partial lockdown. Forcing them would trigger building-wide alarm. He didn't want noise. She offered a cleaner route. North corridor, freight elevator, no alarm, partly true, strategically steering them away from higher-risk areas and toward terrain she'd mapped with fewer bystanders. He hesitated. That hesitation mattered. Then boots sounded from the far stairwell, many feet, controlled, advancing without running. A radio crackled. A disciplined voice cut through. "Hold your position. Do not move." A compact tactical team appeared at the far end of the corridor, weapons visible but kept low, holding the hall like terrain. At the front, an older commander scanned fast and exact. He saw the hostage configuration, and then his eyes landed on Emily. He stopped. Recognition, immediate and clean. The corridor suspended between violence and command. He addressed her with controlled respect. "Ma'am, status." The word hit like a door slamming. Denise turned sharply. Maya's mouth fell open. The armed men froze, because a trained team had just acknowledged the new nurse as someone they answered to. Emily didn't confirm it. She reported like procedure. 1 patient in custody, 2 armed primary in corridor, 3rd at intersection, civilians contained, no shots fired beyond the camera. The commander asked if she wanted engagement. Emily said no, not in this hallway. "Contain," she added, "seal exits, keep them quiet." The commander didn't argue. The net tightened, doors clicking, positions shifting, lines cut without panic. The armed leader grabbed Denise as cover. The partner tightened his grip on the patient. The third man stepped back. Emily watched cornered posture bloom. Denise whispered Emily's name like a prayer. Emily told her softly, "Stay still, do not give them a reason." The armed leader demanded what Emily was. Emily didn't answer. The corridor answered. Disciplined boots, controlled weapons, an authority that didn't belong to a patient floor. And in the silence before anything exploded, Emily paid the cost of being recognized. She was no longer invisible. She was the center of gravity. The corridor became a thin glass space under pressure. 3 armed men held a patient and a charge nurse too close. A tactical team held the far end without rushing, weapons low, bodies angled for angles. Emily stood near the middle without standing in the middle, hands visible, voice low. Recognition had changed the air, but she didn't treat it like a stage. She used it like a tool to slow the moment down. The commander waited for cues. The armed leader finally raised his voice, ordering the team back, threatening Denise. Denise's breath crushed. Maya shook, eyes locked on Emily. Emily didn't move toward Denise, that would invite a trigger. She didn't retreat, that would surrender space. She said calm, "She's not your route out." He mocked her. Emily spoke like a nurse managing volatility. If he fired, he'd be locked in with bodies he couldn't move past. He said he wasn't scared. Emily said it should scare him because it changed his time. The tactical net tightened quietly. The third man glanced behind him, feeling sealed corridors. Emily saw Denise as leverage and made a costly choice. She stepped half a pace forward to pull the leader's attention from Denise to herself. His gun tracked her reflexively. Emily said, "I'll trade you." Denise whispered no. Emily didn't look at Denise because emotion was the fuel of mistakes. The leader sneered about outranking them. Emily kept it practical, take the person the corridor was listening to, buy time. He hated that she was right. The commander held his team back with a subtle hand. The leader shoved Denise aside. She stumbled, caught the wall, stayed still. He ordered Emily closer. Emily walked slowly in a shallow angle, hands visible. He grabbed her scrub top near the badge, twisting it, snapping the clip. He spat the words "Army General" like poison. Emily didn't confirm, she didn't deny. She said, "What I am doesn't change what happens if you fire." He searched her face for fear and found discipline. A cart clattered as the third man bumped it. A baby cried once, then stopped. The leader flinched at noise. Emily used the flinch to speak. His people were getting trapped. He could still walk out if he stopped making this a spectacle. His eyes flicked to sealed intersections. His partner's breathing sped up. The patient swayed, everything balanced on one gunshot. Then the patient's knees buckled, body failing, medical truth. The armed man holding him instinctively used both hands for a fraction of a second. His weapon dipped. Emily moved fast for the first time, not striking, stepping, catching the patient under the arm and lowering him to the floor gently, shielding with nursing posture and corridor geometry. The commander's team advanced in tight angles without firing, cutting lines of sight, boxing the third man. The commander said once, calm as iron, "Drop it." The leader tried to raise his gun again, but his leverage was gone. The hallway had turned against him, and firing risked hitting the patient first. Emily stayed low beside the patient, one hand steadying his shoulder, looked up like a nurse and said, "You came here to take. Now you're choosing how much you leave behind." The leader's weapon trembled, decision, not bravado. He lowered it. The commander said, "Now." The leader's hand opened. The gun hit the floor hard. The second weapon dropped. The third man threw his gun aside near the vending machines. No shots fired down the patient corridor. The tactical team moved in, securing wrists, blocking civilian sightlines. Someone covered the patient with a blanket. Denise slid down the wall and sobbed silently. Maya stared at Emily like she had been watching two different people in the same uniform. The commander stepped close and spoke low. "Ma'am, you want medevac for the witness?" Emily checked the patient's pulse with 2 fingers and said no, stabilize here, move only when corridors are clear. The commander nodded and turned away. Denise whispered Emily's name again, trying to make the story make sense. Emily rose slowly, old shoulder ache flaring, a cost that tightened her breath for one moment. She looked at Denise and said, "I'm a nurse. Do your incident report." Maya whispered, "They called you ma'am." Emily didn't explain. She returned to the station, picked up a fallen clipboard, rehung board sheets. Mundane action as deliberate reset. We are returning to procedure. Overhead, an administrator finally read a shaky script, code silver, all clear. Please resume normal operations. Normal landed heavy. Emily checked the fallen patient again, adjusted a blanket, and said, "You're alive, breathe." She finished charting with neat time stamps, documenting facts, not feelings. When Denise begged for answers, Emily lifted a gentle hand. "No." "Not here." She washed her hands slowly, clipped her twisted badge straight again, and left through the service corridor, avoiding the main hall where stories would form. As she passed the commander at the stairwell, he lowered his gaze and stepped aside without a word. Emily didn't nod back. She just kept walking, shoulders slightly heavy, returning to anonymity because anonymity was safer for everyone. Behind her, Hawthorne began the slow work of pretending it was normal again, while the people who had dismissed the new nurse tried to understand how quietly wrong they had been.